What's up guys, how you all doing? Welcome to another video. So today we're talking confirmed specs of the Canon R7. That's right, I released a video like 2 days ago all about the suspected specs that we were going to be seeing from the Canon R7. Canon rumours had received a load of information. Some of it was a little bit speculative, but it seemed as though those were going to be the specs for the Canon R7. And then literally within 10 minutes of me releasing my video, Canon confirmed some specs for the upcoming R7, some of which differed from what we were talking about in the video, and they've also confirmed some of the RFS lenses and a new R10 camera. Some really interesting stuff in there, and we're going to run through all of it right here on this video today. Okay, so first of all, let's take a look at these Canon R7 specs. So the first thing, the sensor, it has now been confirmed at 32.5 megapixels. That's what we talked about in my last video. That's pretty much what we suspected it was going to be. I think that probably is about right. I know there's a lot of people who are concerned about that 32.5 and is it going to be too much for a crop sensor camera, and is it going to have an issue with noise in low light performance. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, I imagine the low light performance is going to be pretty good compared to what we almost assume in our head when we hear about a crop sensor camera. I think it'll be okay. It'll be really interesting to get hold of one and test it out. But 32.5 megapixel sensor confirmed. Okay, we then move into the speed of the camera. Now this is interesting because this sounds very, very quick. 15 to 30 frames per second. The 15 being mechanical, 30 frames per second electronic shutter. Now the things to bear in mind with that is, of course, with a lot of the older EF lenses, if you're using the mechanical shutter, you're probably not going to get to the 15 frames per second. But in my experience of using older lenses on the R6, it's not exactly going to make it really slow. You just might not get all the way to the 15 frames per second. That said, with the electronic shutter, 30 frames per second, old lenses, new lenses, whatever, it won't matter, 30 frames per second. I know some people might be saying, oh, but the electronic shutter's not usable, rolling shutter. I call that rubbish. The R6 electronic shutter is really, really good. I'm sure the R7 will be just the same. Okay, different from my previous video, it now sounds like we're going to have the 2 SD card slots in this camera. So that's going to be the same as the R6. Now me personally, I'm totally fine with that. I'm sure there'll be some people who would have wanted to see the CF Express card slot in there, but actually, you know what, the 2 SD card slots, I think that's going to be pretty decent. It's going to work totally fine for me and my usage, as does the R6 already. 2 SD card slots in the upcoming R7. Video specs, we've got 4K at 60 frames per second, 50 frames per second. We've got 1080p at 120 frames per second. We've got the C-Log 3 like we talked about in the previous video. That's all the video specs that I'm going to need. I'm not worried about 8K. I never thought it would have 8K anyway. Totally good for me. Going to crack on with that. Really pleased. In-body image stabilization, again, I figured we would have that, the same as the R6. I imagine it's probably going to be the same setup as the R6, so I think that probably is going to be pretty good as well. Now, perhaps the most exciting confirmed thing about the Canon R7 is that it sounds like we're looking at an official Canon announcement as soon as next month, June or July 2022. So it could literally be in like 2-3 weeks, we've got an idea of exactly what that camera is going to be like, how it's going to look. Now, on the subject of how it's going to look, Canon rumours have suggested that they've actually seen what it's going to look like, and whilst they said they can't share the official images, they did show some apparent mock-up images which they've said are pretty close. Now, when you look at those mock-up images, I can't help but notice that it has the dial on the top, the same as the R6. That is where the screen would go on the R5, so I'm assuming it's going to have the dial same as the R6 rather than the screen on the top like the R5. I'm okay with that. Was never really fussed about that screen when I had the EOS R. The dial on the top that I've got on the R6 now works good for me. Some people are going to be disappointed about that lack of top screen, I think. Me actually, not fussed at all. Sounds good. The other thing that I noticed in that picture is it's got like a little quick flick switch on the front that looks like it shows that it would switch between manual focus and autofocus. I imagine that probably would be a switch you could change to do various things. It might be that that switch isn't going to be on the camera. Maybe that's a bit of a red herring to kind of show a mock-up that's not an official image to get you asking questions, stuff like that. But who knows, maybe that's actually going to be there. That would be interesting to see. So look, that's pretty much the confirmed specs of the Canon R7. Whilst we're here, let's talk about this R10. So the R10 sounds like an interesting camera. I think it is likely to be the successor to the Canon EOS M5 and the M6 Mark II. It sounds like that is going to be the kind of next run in that series of cameras. It sounds like it's going to have a 24.2 megapixel sensor and 15 to 23 frames per second mechanical or electric shutter. It sounds like it's going to be a pretty decent camera. It'd be really good to see. Maybe see if we can get hold of one of those on the channel as well and give that a play. I haven't really been a user of the M5 or M6 cameras in the past, so that'd be a bit different for me. But if we can get hold of one or we'll make some videos on it, then I absolutely will. Moving on from there, Canon also have confirmed some specs, or at least some model types, for their first RFS lenses. So it does sound like we're going to have an RF series specifically for APS-C sensor cameras. I imagine these lenses will probably become the kit lenses that end up getting released as part of kits with the R7 or the R10 cameras. The first of which is the RFS 18 to 45 millimeters. That's an f3.5 to f5.6. That kind of very much sounds like a kit lens. A lot of you will be familiar with the 1855 kit lens, f3.5 to 5.6 that we used to see with a lot of the previous cameras. In fact, that came with my 7D Mark I as part of a kit, if I recall. So that does very much sound like a kit lens. They've also announced something a bit longer, so that's an RFS 18 to 150mm, and that one is f3.5 to f6.3. I remember I had a lens, it was a 55 to 250mm, which I think was f4 to f6.3, something like that. So sounds kind of fairly similar to a couple of the older EFS kit lenses that we used to have. Now, when I say kit lens, I don't mean that to be derogatory. I'm sure they will be good lenses, and I imagine somebody who's starting out with a camera using one of those lenses with something like the R10, that's going to be a really decent setup. I don't mean it in any kind of bad way. Yeah, they might not be pro lenses, but you know what, I bet they will be pretty good, and I imagine they will be a huge step forwards from things like the old 1855 EFS lens. It'd be really interesting to see what those are like. So things have escalated rapidly in the last 2 days. Who knows what's going to happen next? Canon are going to officially release the R1, and I'll be sat here in 2 days' time making another panicked video to share some specs with you guys. If that happens, you know I'll try and get it right here on the channel. We'll be talking about all of those, and of course I do intend on trying to get hold of a Canon R7 as soon as I possibly can to make some videos about it right here. If you'd like to see those, make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Loads of videos to come on the R7 as and when we can get hold of one. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you do me a favour, hit the like button, helps me out loads and loads on the channel. In the meantime guys, thank you very much for watching. I will see you on the next video.